Good afternoon. Jonas, Schwartz at SNY's Midtown Studios. We interrupt our regularly scheduled programming to bring you the breaking news that the Mets have announced that General Manager Sandy Alderson has a treatable form of cancer that will force him to miss the winter meetings. He will be undergoing chemotherapy for 8 to 12 weeks as he tries to battle this disease. We're not exactly sure. It has not been announced what type of cancer he has, but this is the news that has just emanated from a beat writer's luncheon with the Mets, and then the Mets giving us this information. We bring in on the phone Andy Martino, senior writer for the Daily News, who, of course, was a Mets beat writer and the Baseball Insider for the newspaper, knows the inner workings of the Mets very well. Andy, is this news a surprise to you?
Well, Jonas, first of all, of course, it feels like a cliche when you say it, but it's not, because it's heartfelt. You wish the best for Sandy Alderson. Glad to hear that this is treatable. And beyond that, information-wise, it's not a huge surprise in that there was a lot of talk around the team in recent weeks that Alderson was not in great health. Of course, he did collapse during that media session just after the World Series. He did miss the GM meetings to have a procedure, so it was no great secret that there was something going on with his health. And beyond that, behind the scenes, certainly there was a feeling that this might be something that could be ongoing or get into the news again. So when I saw the announcement that he was dealing with cancer, I didn't know, and I don't think anybody knew publicly that it was that specifically, but it does not surprise me that there's a health issue.
Let's talk a little bit about, as you mentioned, obviously our thoughts and prayers go out to Sandy and his family. We are a sports station. Let's talk about some of the sports ramifications here. Mets are going to the winter meetings. Who is in charge of running things for that front office now?
Well, this is where that real trusted group of lieutenants that Alderson brought in 2010 comes in real handy, because Paul DePodesta is a guy who he trusts above almost anybody. J.P. Ricciardi is another guy who he's worked with for years. And John Rico's been a Wilpon guy for years before that, even under Omar Minaya. So he's got a great staff that's been working with agents and talking to other teams about trades and free agents and all kinds of transactions for years. Alderson's always been good at delegating stuff. So I would expect minimal disruption, and, of course, he'll be available via telephone and email and everything else, I would presume. So I would think that from a baseball ops standpoint, he's set up his front office that won't be too disturbed by this.
You know, we've also seen, not the first time we've seen a circumstance like this in New York sports. Joe Torre, of course, had missed a couple of months years ago, where Don Zimmer had to fill in for him as an acting manager as he underwent cancer treatments. So we've seen these scenarios before where we've seen guys, Andy, come back and perform their jobs just fine.
Yeah, exactly. And, of course, when you hear cancer, it's a scary word, and we don't know the specific diagnosis, as I believe we did with those guys in the past. So it was a little easier to understand how it would play out. But, of course, this can range from anything from very temporary to very serious. And as human beings, of course, we hope that it's on the very temporary and very minor side of this.
Absolutely. And, you know, so as the Mets go forward here towards the winter meetings to some degree, this should not be a disrupt. I know it's secondary concern. The foremost concern is Sandy Alderson's health. But from the baseball side of things, this does not disrupt anything.
Right. And of course, and I think it's legitimate to wonder, of course, how the business will continue to be run. You've got a franchise. Sandy Alderson wouldn't want anything to fall through the cracks just because he has a personal issue. So that's exactly what I would expect to happen, that the baseball side would be fine. In fact, I'm continuing to hear that they're pursuing Ben Zobrist and going for that, and we'll see how that plays out over the next few days. But I would expect them to be full steam ahead on baseball stuff.
I was going to ask you that one last question. Do a report Zobrist visited with the Mets on Wednesday. Sandy Alderson was apparently involved with his meeting. Jeff Wilpon as well. Do you know anything further on Zobrist and whether he's very much in play for the Mets?
Yeah, that was Ken Rosenthal's report, of course, about the visit. That tells you a very concrete way to understand what I'd heard, Jonas, which is that the Mets have been feeling very good about that pursuit. I'm hearing that it's still that they're not all that likely to match the highest offer on him necessarily or go 4 years. But that visit, the report of that visit indicates that the two sides are moving along in a very serious way. So, of course, that doesn't mean the signing is going to get done, but it does mean that this is a real pursuit of this free agent.
Andy, I know we've obviously been speaking about a condition, a disease that we don't have all the information of. It's not an easy thing to do. We appreciate you giving us a few minutes of your time and a little insight into this situation.
Of course, Jonas.